there's two sides to every coin. Then there's a conversation you can join. But I'm an old dog and there's new tricks. And some of my opinions you just can't fix. 'Cause I'm an old man yelling at the sky. I'ma shake my fists at the clouds and cry. Get off my lawn, you snowflake, before I have a meltdown, breakdown, shakedown. 'Cause this is my hometown, so back down, sports clown. It's all just a game, and it's the last down, let down, cowtown. I said it's all just a game. I give the touchdown, the rundown, the lowdown. 'Cause it's over the game, gonna crack down and shut down the sundown. I said it's all just a game.
All right, there we are. Hello, I am Danny Austin. This is the Just a Game with Rob Kerr, although neither of us are Rob Kerr. As I said, I'm Danny Austin, and you are Cami Kepke.
Oh, I thought you forgot for a second.
No, I was trying to prompt you.
I was having a pretty good chuckle though, just listening to the lyrics of Rob's song and just kind of watching you sweat over there, waiting to see if there was a countdown or not.
So if you're wondering whether I know how the countdown works to start this show, I do not. So there was a lot of right before we went on air, me being how does this start? What's happening, Cami? You didn't help. You just let me sweat over here. It was not great.
I mean, you know lots of things. You figured it out.
Here we are.
Darling.
We're doing it.
Talking words.
We're really doing
Same
it.
stuff.
Cami,
Sports.
how are you? It is Wednesday, May 17th here in a very smoky Calgary, Alberta, Canada. How are you holding up?
It's awful out there. I had already lost my voice. So I sounded like Gollum for a couple of days. And now I don't know, you just want to you want to go hike. You want to golf and you can't.
Yeah.
There's a pond by me. So I kind of just go to the backyard and chip a couple balls over the fence into some water and then hustle back in.
Yeah. I mean, I want to do my job, which is mostly to cover the Calgary Stampeders, and I couldn't do it today because the air quality was too bad. And
they have to move inside again?
Yeah. Well, normally they have a couple indoor facilities that they rotate, but none of them were available. So for the first time, I've been covering the Calgary Stampeders since 2016, and I may be wrong, but for the first time in 7 years that I've covered the team, practice was canceled. I mean, I guess they canceled a lot of practices in 2020 when the CFL was the only league to not play. But other than that, yeah. So it is awful here. I hope everyone out there is staying safe. Obviously, there is a funny component just because it's a apocalyptic hellscape out there. But there's a more serious side, and we hope everyone's staying happy and healthy and staying inside if you can.
But it's nasty. A couple of years ago, I tried to 2020 just because there wasn't that much stuff you could do. You were allowed to go out and hike. I decided once let's just go hike. We can tough it out through the smoke. We're young, we're fit. Mm-hmm. It was so gross at the top of Surreal Ridge. I had to pop out my contacts and wash them with my water bottle because they got gunked up from the smoke.
That's gross.
Disgusting.
Yeah. And it's mid-May. This is earlier than normal. Let's talk sports. This is Just a Game is a sports podcast / YouTube show. Not sure what we actually call that. Should have clarified before co-hosting. Last time,
Oodle Noodle studio, lest we forget.
This is supposed to be our third time sort of co-hosting together. Last time was on the day that Daryl Sutter was fired. So I had to go to the Saddledome, and you very graciously and super professionally stepped in and hosted on your own. So I want to, again, it's about 3 weeks, a month removed from that. Thank you for that. But yeah, here we are. We're here together. We've got, I really think we got a great lineup of guests. We've got Peter Maher, an absolute legend. A guy who honestly, I've been in the same room with just as a Flames reporter. And obviously I'm very well aware of who he is. He's a tight end. I know he's been on the show with Rob a number of times, but I've actually I don't think I've said a word to the guy. So I'm actually pretty excited. It's going to be cool to get to pick his brain a little bit. Obviously a big figure, you growing up in Western Canada. Peter's a big deal to you.
Stories for days.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's got everything. And just, one of those voices where even as a kid, if you don't really know the lore or the backstory, you know the voice.
Exactly.
Even if you're not from Alberta, which is really cool.
And then we got my friend and yours, Salim Valji from TSN. Can't wait to have him on.
Danny is so looking forward to putting him in the hot seat.
Putting him in the hot seat.
Seeing if he wears a suit here.
The question is whether he wears a suit. I love Salim. He's legitimately a good friend. We play on the same slow pitch team, which I'm sure our audience is going to be hyped to hear me get into because I've got some thoughts on slow pitch. But yeah, I mean, good friend of both of ours, and it's going to be super fun. But the guy wears suits. Like, you think it's just when he's on air, but he wears suits everywhere. But
the thing is, okay, so especially covering the Flames, generally, I think this year sometimes Donna Spencer from Canadian Press is there, but generally I've been the only woman up there for
fair.
Calgary media
this
last
year you
season.
been,
yeah. But I dress like a slob. I wear the same old boots every day. The guys are so obsessed with what they wear. Ryan Leslie and Francis talking about their suits. What pocket square should I wear? Salim gets a custom leather jacket from Morocco. You're in a constant sweater contest with Julian McKenzie.
It's true. It's true.
We need a style ranking just for the male reporters.
Yeah, I mean, I don't wear suits. Let's be clear. Why do I not wear suits? Because I have 3 suits, all bought before I maybe gained a little bit of weight. So if I was invited, or not invited, if there was a funeral that I had to attend right now, I couldn't. My suit doesn't fit. So that's the main reason I don't wear suits. But, I try. I don't know. If I had the suits that those TV guys had,
No, it's
I wouldn't wear
still
them
still
every
very
day.
style obsessed.
I'm
It's
not a
just a
dork,
different
but-
style. You're the only person I know who could identify what sneakers Blake Coleman is wearing.
Well, they're Jordan 1s. They're very sick. We're going to make fun of Salim for wearing suits more later. So let's just...
We do have sports happening right now.
We have sports happening right now. So I'm going to kind of just read this off because given that the Flames aren't playing, given that the Stampeders season hasn't started, this kind of puts it in perspective. But, this is a actually really, really busy week for Calgary sports. And this is before the surge even get going in what, a week and a half, 2 weeks now?
27th is tip-off against the Edmonton Stingers.
Exactly.
Up at Winsport. That's going to be great.
Which I know you're pretty hyped about, so am I. But starting tonight, Calgary Wranglers, they are down 2-1 in their Pacific Division Championship Series against the Coachella Valley Firebirds. They're trying to, fight off elimination in Palm Springs. That game gets started at 7. Should they win, Game 5 goes Friday, 7 p.m. as well. We're going to talk, I assume, a fair bit about the Wranglers because I know both of us have actually really, really been enjoying the playoffs. But I don't know, I want it to keep going. It's not a cheering for them thing, but I've really enjoyed getting to go to the Dome. Hockey this late in the season is not always a thing here in Calgary. So I've really enjoyed it. You've managed to make it to a couple games?
Yeah, I went out to the Abbotsford series. I was out of town last week, but just following along. But it's been really good hockey. People are really buying into it. They've had the pom-poms and stuff that they're handing out at the games. People are really feeding into that. The kids are loving the barnyard noises that they're playing there now. And I actually saw Daryl Sutter in the stands as a fan watching all the
his
games.
son plays for the team. So
Yeah.
But yeah, I also...
And we still have Chris Sutter.
I don't know. Yeah, absolutely. We still have Chris Sutter time. You follow Cavalry much more closely than I do, which is something I actually regret. I've loved every game that I've gone to. It's just, I live downtown. It's pretty far south. And to be honest, when I get a day off in the summer on the weekend, I typically don't want anything to do with sports. So I do not follow Cavalry. I love them. Huge support of what they're doing. But they're away this weekend. They're in Ottawa playing Atletico on Sunday, but then next Sunday they are back here at Atco Field playing New York United. But tell me right now, I know it's early, tell me the story of their season so far. What am I missing?
Unfortunately, May 21st is when they are back at Atco Field.
Really? Huh.
Yep.
I would have thought I would have got that right because I
Atletico
literally just
Ottawa.
copied it from the website, but I believe you.
Oh, no, the thing is, for hockey, it's, normally... Nope, never mind. It is listed that way. No.
I don't know.
May 21st, they're hosting Atletico Ottawa. Ottawa finished second. They lost to Forge in the final last season.
So are they not at home on the 28th? This is fascinating.
No,
to me.
they are in York on the 28th.
Huh. Yeah. What do you know? Well, guys, I apologize.
Okay, no, I see what it is. You know, hockey, it's always like Calgary at Edmonton.
Yeah.
It is not set up that way on the website. You have to look at the venue to make sure you got it right.
Got it. I also was looking on Google, and typically the home team for most sports is listed second. Anyways, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
This is my second time hosting. There's going to be mistakes. I'm going to get things wrong.
Story of the
Gonna
season
get
for the
dates
Cats,
of
though.
games wrong. Yeah.
I mean, solid start.
I'm
but
a professional
honestly,
journalist. Yeah. I'm
the
great at
story
this.
of the season is that the Cavs got to hang on to a lead.
Okay.
They've been there. They were able to tie it up late on a penalty kick against the Halifax Wanderers last weekend. So, you know, this just draws across the board. The day that you were unable to join me in here, actually, though, our guest, Maher Bevan, the Kiwi sensation, is leading the league in goals, and he's got 3 to his name so far.
What do you know?
Mm-hmm.
I love the...
So, like, they've got some scoring. They haven't been held off the sheet. They just got to hang on.
All right. Well,
Maybe a little more attack through the midfield.
I don't feel qualified to offer an opinion, except like, you know, I hope they do better at that. It is worth noting that we are hanging on to talking any Flames here just because we have Peter and then Salim.
Mm-hmm.
So if you were wondering why we are not touching the big stories of the day, we are burying the lead a little bit, but it is
We
because
are getting there.
What's
We're
that?
going to talk about some Coyotes.
Yeah, we've got lots of NHL to talk about, but we're just kind of trying to make sure we get through a couple other things. Another
International?
thing, pardon me.
Go international? Canada's on the ice right now?
How are they doing in the World Championships right now?
Well, I mean, they're undefeated right now.
But like in the game?
Okay, so 5-1 against Kazakhstan.
Okay.
Shocking.
What period?
Huh? Third.
Would you expect us to be beating Kazakhstan by more than 4 goals? Okay.
It's not World Juniors. They don't need to pump them 12
Fair.
for it. But why it's interesting to us, Mackenzie Weegar, continuing his little tear there. He opened up the scoring. He's got a nice little apple there. Mr. Milan Lucic just registered an assist. So the guys are going, and like we've talked about Worlds before. Our buddy Aaron Vickers is over there right now. He's attended a lot of World Championships. He sees it as something where the players are a lot more relaxed, a lot more open, especially with reporters, even if, you know, it's reporters that they see all the time at home with their NHL teams. And it can really be a boost for guys. I think of Andrew Mangiapane having a big breakout at Worlds 2 seasons ago. And then, you know, he came into the regular season and he was fantastic. And, you know, I think he'll bounce back next season, but obviously he's not there now recovering from surgery. But this could be a boost for guys like a Mackenzie Weegar, like not like Tyler Toffoli needs it, but even like a Milan Lucic to kind of, you know, get that confidence and get back into a no pressure fun of the game. It's like the beauty league international.
Put a couple in against Kazakhstan, and who knows what happens next season. I think it's you're right.
But, you know, it's fun. Like, why would you not want to be playing semi-meaningful hockey with your buddies in Riga?
I couldn't agree more. Send me to Latvia. Literally anybody would love to go. Calgary Roughnecks, another team that you follow that I absolutely do not. So not that I don't mean to.
Board.
Not that I don't want to. Again, it is weekend games where if I get time off on the weekend, I typically do not go to sports. Tell me, I mean, I know they're hosting the Colorado Mammoth Game 3 on Saturday night, NLL Western Conference Final at the Saddledome.
Winner's going to go on to take the Buffalo Bandits in the final. It has been a crazy, I think, unexpected season for the Roughnecks. All you could talk about coming into this was they lost Curtis Superman Dixon. That's huge. We knew they would have to be scoring by committee, and they delivered with their best regular season in franchise history. And Curtis Dixon and the San Diego Seals taken out by Colorado in the first round. Colorado eliminated Calgary last year. And these have been tight games. Calgary's hanging in there with them. They let the lead slip away in game 1, and they definitely have the firepower to, you know, force this thing and go on to the final. Tyler Pace had a hat trick and 4 assists. Tanner Cook had a hat trick. Jesse King, the new captain, he scored twice and had 6 assists in that last game. It's been insane. And the Courier brothers have, you know, been big in transition. They have their goalie, Christian Del Bianco, up for goalie of the year. Courier's up for transition player of the year. Zach Not Josh. Kurt Malosky up for coach of the year. Mike Board up for GM of the year. Like, it's insane how well this has been going. But, you know, they had just under 8,000 fans last weekend, and they pretty regularly get up over 10,000, and I would hope they could do so this weekend. So fans, get out there. I'm pretty sure the tickets are 20% off right now. So
aren't they 20% off a price that was increased for the playoffs, though?
Ooh, unsure.
I'm not 100% sure on that either. Probably shouldn't comment too much. But yeah, I mean, again, Roughnecks, honestly, all of the young people at CSEC, like, really, really love the Roughnecks. So it's just like, as someone in my late 30s, it's just intimidating.
Because they have big personalities. I think it's a lot of why you like football as well.
Yeah.
It's like guys who, this isn't all they do. They have like a full-fledged doctor on their team.
I mean, that really puts in perspective, doesn't it? Okay, speaking of football, because I think we've only got probably a minute or two before Peter hops on here. Stampeders, I don't know. For those, my main job is covering the Calgary Stampeders, so I will just quickly say it's been super fun. They're back on the field, not today or yesterday at McMahon Stadium, but training camp is going on. Honestly, super interesting team this year. A lot of turnover, a lot of veterans who sort of moved on, almost all of them to Hamilton. But yeah, they honestly, when I went to sort of build their depth chart, I was sort of surprised by how few holes there actually were. Middle linebacker, but not much else. So, right tackle. But those are sort of the two big positions that you'd worry about. And other than that, they've got guys with experience. Maybe guys who have filled in for injury. So I'm really excited. They are playing the Edmonton Elks on Monday. Kickoff at McMahon is 2 p.m. And that means I can get to my slow pitch game afterwards, which I'm really excited about because I was not happy with the way that my most recent slow pitch game went, and when Salim gets here, we're gonna talk about it. Which I know is just such good radio. People love hearing me talk about my recreational B slow pitch team. But we're gonna.
On the note of the Stamps, though, I am curious to see who do you see filling the role of Therm? What's that competition for that position look like?
I think Perry Young has looked really, really good at camp so far. Silas Stewart would have been... No, Micah Alloway would have been my front runner. He's played in BC, played, I believe, in Ottawa, definitely played in Montreal, has some CFL experience. He was their sort of free agent signing, but Silas Stewart filled in a couple games for Therm last year. I think Perry Young, everything I've heard, has just had an exceptional start to the camp. So I think those two are absolutely sort of ready to go and available. And I think they're going to have big roles to play one way or another. But I wrote about this yesterday, to be honest. If you go back to 2018, which is Alex Singleton's last year, Singleton goes, signs with the Eagles. Then we didn't know. This was one of the questions going into 2019. Who was going to be middle linebacker? It was Corey Greenwood, played most of the year, got hurt, Winton McManus stepped in. McManus went to the NFL later in the year. 2020, the season's canceled because the CFL can't get its act together. 2021, we had no idea who it was going to be. It was Darnell Sankey. Did he lead the league in tackles? I believe he did. If not, he was second. Was exceptional. And then last year, we weren't sure if Thurman could make the move from Will to Mike. And he absolutely thrived and was one of the best linebackers in the league. This is a question that has happened every single year, and the Stampeder system is sort of built around that middle linebacker, and they slot guys in, and they typically don't have a problem. So it's one of those ones where you lose this titanic figure in Jameer Thurman, a leader in the locker room. That stuff worries me more than anything that happens on the field. And I still think that there are leaders in that locker room who can fill that void. So that's sort of my answer to that.
You talk about titanic figures. I mean, we're going to talk more Stamps when Salim gets in here because obviously he covers them as well. But Titans, the legend straight from the banks of the Restigouche River. I see Peter Marr down here.
See there? We got him.
I see him.
Let's do it.
Pride of Campbellton, get up.
Hello, Peter.
Howdy, crew.
How are you doing today? How are you handling the smoke?
Pardon me?
How are you handling the smoke? Is everything going okay?
I'm being very careful with it because I have some lung issues from a health event I had a few years ago. So I'm staying indoors for the most part. Yesterday and again today, although today's not as bad as it was yesterday out there by the look of it. So,
no.
But anyway, I'm surviving.
Good to hear. Yeah, we got to stay safe out there. It has been an interesting start to the offseason for the Calgary the Calgary Flames. I am sorry. I want to ask you, because you know this organization and its history better than anyone. Have you heard anything? Or are they entering the home stretch in their GM search? Should we be expecting news soon?
Danny, I would say so. I don't have any inside information, but I do know that they have meetings coming up next week with their scouts to prepare for the upcoming NHL draft. So usually you'd like to have your general manager in place for those meetings because he's going to have a big say when they get to the NHL draft that's coming up in Nashville. And also they have some pretty big decisions to make with regard to playing personnel. They've got 7 players on this Flame team that are eligible to sign extended contracts with the team on July 1 because they'll be going into their final year of their contracts, and they're very important players there. Like they got Backlund and Lindholm and Toffoli, Dubé, Hanifin, Tanev, and Zadorov. These guys are players that I'm sure like to have going forward for a long term. Do they want to stay here long term? And I think they need to find out from these guys fairly soon what their future plans are going to be. They can't afford to have another situation like they had last year when Johnny Gaudreau at the last minute informed them that he's not going to re-sign here, and they end up losing his services for nothing. So, to me, they've got to sit down and chat with the agents for these guys. And generally, you would do that when you have your general manager in place. So it's going to be real interesting to see who is selected, obviously, to be general manager. And one of his first tasks is going to be that. He can't afford to sit around and wait. Now, July 1st is the date that that date and beyond is when they can sign contract extensions to these players if they can make some kind of agreement. But as we all know, things go on behind the scenes. It at least can rush these things up to that particular point and then make the official signing later. So to me, it's very, very critical with these guys. If they're not going to give an indication that they're willing to commit to a longer-term contract with the team, I think they've got to make moves, and they've got to make some moves during the offseason. Some would say, well, wait until the trade deadline comes later in the season. But the problem with that is that if you get to the trade deadline and you have your team in a good spot to make the playoffs and having a good year, you don't want to release these players because it might weaken your team and end the chemistry on the hockey club. So, and then your return might not be as good either. So if you can move these guys during the offseason, if you feel that they're not going to re-sign, then you can get a decent return in exchange for them. So to me, that means, that the hiring of this general manager has to be fairly soon. And from all I'm hearing, they've talked to a number of people with regard to that job, both within the organization and outside. And as I stipulated, or as I mentioned when I was on with Rob here a couple of weeks ago, it's a very key aspect of them. When they're interviewing, they should interview as many as 10 to 12 from other that are not within the Flame organization to get their opinion and what they think are some of the problems that the Flames have or some of the issues that they may have. These are some of these things, maybe something they hadn't noticed. Even if they haven't decided, maybe they've decided to give the job to Danny Austin, and they should still talk to these people just to get their insights on what they feel the team is. So, as I say, we're getting very close to having that GM hiring with the Flames.
Of course, having an idea of what the long-term plan is, who the coaching personnel will be, who the GM will be, could have an impact on whether these players decide to re-sign or not. But in your experience, historically, whether it's within the Flames organization or outside, do GMs, when they're interviewing, typically come in with a head coach candidate in mind when there is still a vacancy at that position?
When you look at the Flame, you talk about the coaching situation? Yeah.
I think so.
Or like when GMs are interviewing, if someone's interviewing Danny for a GM job, would he typically come in saying, this is the kind of head coach I envision working with this team?
Yeah, I think that's the other important part of all of this, getting the general manager in place, is they also have to get a coach. Now, it's not as important to get a coach in line for the draft that comes up in the latter part of June. But, if you have your coach in place by then, okay. But the coach doesn't have a whole lot to say what goes on at the draft, but we'll have a lot to say or something to say when they get into the free agency starting on July the 1st. So the coaching situation is something they're going to have to do. GM is also going to have to promptly jump into and make some decisions with interviewing various coaches. And again, the same thing as I was mentioning earlier, they should talk to as many coaching candidates as 10 or 12 outside of their own organization to get their particular thoughts on what they think of the Flames team. What are some of the situations they feel need to be improved, that are problems or whatever. Because there's always something that you may have overlooked in that situation. And it's interesting, I was asked by a Flame fan a couple of days ago, should they go after a coach that's been recycled, a coach has been coached other teams in the NHL, or should they bring someone in that is not coached previously in the NHL? And, you know, when you look at it with the 4 teams that are left in the Stanley Cup playoffs right now, 3 of those coaches are recycled. And those 3 are all coaching teams for the first time this year. And the only one that's been around for a long period of time among the 4 coaches that are remaining is Rob Brindamore with Carolina. And he practically retired as a player and then became a coach with the Hurricanes and has done an outstanding job there. But when you look at the Dallas coach, Peter DeBoer, he's coaching. That's Dallas's 4th coach in the last 5 years. And you look at the Vegas with their coach, Bruce Cassidy, he is their 3rd coach in 3 years. And Cassidy was fired last year as coach of the Boston Bruins. So it's it's a real interesting situation when you see how many coaches these teams have gone through in recent years. You look at the Flames, and the next coach they hire is going to be their 6th coach in 10 years. So that's an awful lot of coaches over that period of time. Yet you look at the coaches that have great stability. I mentioned Rod Brindamore with the number of years and the success he's had with the Hurricanes, and then you've also got John Cooper in Tampa, who's coached that team for 10 years and has led them to 2 Stanley Cups and also got them to a Stanley Cup final last year. So when you're looking at what kind of coach you want, there's some of the examples that you can throw out there. So a lot of people say they shouldn't be recycling coaches. But when you look at that, I mean, 3 of the 4 that are in there are recycled coaches now that could lead their team this year to the Stanley Cup championship. And in the Flame situation, and Danny, your papers, the Sun and the Herald today, having a feature on Mitch Love, the coach of the Calgary Wranglers, and mentioning him as a possible guy to be coaching the Flames with their next hire. So, and he certainly had a great year with the Wranglers this year and last year when they were playing out of Stockton. So, it's going to be an extensive search that they have to do. So, that is another thing that needs to get started relatively soon.
I wanted to ask you about Mitch Love, actually, because clearly it's a name that people should be talking about. He coaches a pretty hard-nosed style, very familiar with the younger players who are starting to make that jump to the NHL more regularly now. But he's very young. He's 39 years old. I'm curious. I mean, say he's like a month older than Joe Pavelski. How would that work going onto a team where, some guys are in their early 30s? They're pretty similar in age, and these guys have a lot more NHL experience. What could that transition look like should they go to Mitch Love?
Well, that would be an interesting transition, no question about it. And Mitch Love, as I mentioned, has done an excellent job in his 2 years coaching the Flames American League farm team. As you mentioned, a very young guy for coach. I don't know if the Flames have ever had a coach that young at the age of 38 being the head coach of the team. As I go back in my head here, the history of the coaches the team has had, I don't believe there's anyone that's been that young coaching the team, but certainly he would have a good hand on the organization. Having been here in Calgary to watch a number of the Flame games, as I'm sure he did over the past season, and of course have a good handle on the players that are playing with the Wranglers, and they seem to be responding to him very well with his coaching techniques and tactics and the way that he handles the team. And as you mentioned, the team definitely needs to get younger. I mean, they were the 2nd oldest team in the NHL this past year, and going forward, they need to become a younger team so they can put some of these young guys in the lineup that Daryl, when he was coaching, seemed to be a bit reluctant to give these younger players an opportunity to play for long periods of time. So that would be another plus, having Mitch Love come in as coach of the team. Now, I'm sure the organization has a pretty good handle on Mitch's qualities and that sort of thing. So it would be interesting to see how active they are with him with regard to that job once they get a GM in place with the Flames. And of course, once the Wrangler season ends, and hopefully it won't end tomorrow night, with that a big game that they've got down in Palm Springs, trying to keep their season alive.
I want to sort of move on to a slightly different topic. There has been some controversy around Calgary and around sort of Flames fans about the reported decision by the Flames to not allow Brad Treliving to interview with other teams. I honestly, from my perspective, there are two sides to this situation, and I can see them both. But what do you think when you hear that?
Well, the way I look at it, and I don't have any inside information whether this is correct, that the Flames are not allowing him to be interviewed by any other team at this point in time, since he's still under contract with the Flames and will be until the end of June. But, some reliable sources that are out there are mentioning that the Flames are not giving him permission. The way I look at it is that the Flames are not breaking any rules by doing that. You would say, well, they should be giving the guy a chance to get another job. Well, the thing is with that, you have to look at it deeply in that he's been around this Flame organization for 9 years. And over the past year, he's been very actively involved with the team scouts and that sort of thing, preparing for the draft that's coming up that we talked about earlier. So he's got some pretty good insight on what the Flames are thinking about players that are playing right now that are eligible to be drafted. And I'm sure they don't want that information passed along to another team should they happen to hire him as a general manager or whatever other position that they may have available. Another thing that crossed my mind with regard to why the Flames are not allowing him to interview for another job at this particular point in time while he's under contract is that I'm wondering if they're thinking about not bringing him back and offering the general manager job to him. As you will recall, in the news conference they had, I guess it was about a month ago, when John Bean was there along with Don Maloney, they talked about the fact that they were quite surprised that he didn't want to come back as a GM of the coach of the team, and that they'd offered him contracts and he turned them down, but they were pretty confident, at least in the comments they were making at that time, that they thought that they'd be able to get him signed. So the underlying thing here, whether it's factual or not, is that he and Darryl didn't get along all that well, or weren't on the same plane. But Darryl now has gone. So I'm just wondering if he is not a guy that the Flames right now are considering offering the vacant general manager's job to. Now, very rarely does it happen that a guy resigns from his job with a team at a position of general manager and then comes right back again as the next general manager of the team, recovering that position. But I wouldn't rule that out. Just in my own particular opinion, and based on the things that evolved at the time that he elected to part company with the Flames.
I think that's it would be fascinating if it happened. And I think that your first point about, we got to remember this is a competitive business, right? I mean, the Flames, There are competitive reasons why the Flames wouldn't want Brad joining up with another team prior to July 1st. So I'm actually very much on your side there. So that's refreshing to hear, because some of the reaction on Twitter has been far more negative towards the Flame stance, but I couldn't agree with you more. So I guess my next one would be, I don't know how closely you are monitoring the situation down in Arizona, but they voted down a new arena.
The 3 propositions.
Yes. Yes.
There you go.
What, in your mind, is next? This feels like, to be honest, I'm 39. It feels like this has been a mess my entire adult life. What do you think is next for this organization and for potentially the future of hockey in Arizona, I guess?
Well, as I understand it, the league has said since making that announcement, or their comment on Tempe turning down the arena with a public vote, and that went on yesterday, is that they're going to stay in Arizona for this coming season, and again play in the Mullet Arena, which seats, I guess, a little under 5,000 people for NHL games. And the fact that the league has pretty much decided, and the team pretty much decided, that they'll stay there makes some sense. It's pretty late for scheduling and that sort of thing. There's a long process that would go into place to moving the team. So my guess is that unless they can come up with some alternative situation to keep the team in Arizona with a bona fide NHL arena, in that next season, the NHL and the current owners of the Coyotes we'll be talking with a number of other communities or people that want to have an NHL franchise. And to me, the logical one would be Houston. They've got an arena there that is fit for hockey. They also have an owner who has lots of money and is interested in having a team. However, you hear the names of Atlanta coming up again. I would seriously not want to put a team in Atlanta. I mean, they've had 2 teams there. The Flames were there in the 70s before they came to Calgary, and they didn't draw very well. And then they had the Thrashers there. They didn't draw very well, and eventually went to Winnipeg. So I'm not thinking Atlanta is a very good location. Now, we're also hearing Salt Lake City as a potential city for that Phoenix franchise if the movement is going to take place. I know the league will not want to play in that 5,000-seat arena any more than one more year or 2 years if they have a promise of a new arena, which doesn't seem that's going to happen anywhere now by the sound of things. To go back to the also Quebec City will be another one I think that will be looking to see if they can gain an NHL franchise. I remember a number of years ago there were people from Quebec City were talking to Gary Bettman, and it became public that Bettman had told them, well, you don't have an NHL arena. If you have an NHL arena, then you'd be under consideration for getting another NHL team. At that time, they still had the old Coliseum. Well, these people got together and built a brand new arena in Quebec City. I've never been in it, but from what I'm told, it's a beautiful, beautiful arena. And it's been existent now for at least 5 years. Basically, all they have is the Quebec Ramparts playing out of there and Celine Dion concerts. So, it's a building that's sitting there rather vacant. And even though it cost a lot of money to build and is very much an NHL structure, I think that's something to be looked at, whether or not the NHL wants to go to Quebec City or not. To revert back to Arizona and the team being in Phoenix as long as they have, and, to me, they played in a beautiful arena in Glendale, which is the arena they played in up until this year. Although back in the early years, the first few years the team was in the league, they played at the arena downtown in Phoenix. But that was built for basketball. There was one end of the building where people couldn't sit because it extended out over to the ice and the upper level. And so there was a lot of fear of the pucks went up there, people would get injured. So they stayed there for, 3 or 4 years. Then they got the new arena built for them in Glendale. And then they decided, well, Glendale's not good for it because our fan base is located a long distance from Glendale. Some say it takes about 50 minutes to an hour to drive from Scottsdale, which I guess the bulk of their hockey fans are, and it's in rush hour traffic to get there on top of that. But my view on thing is that a big reason why they haven't drawn good crowds in Phoenix for forever, it seems, is that they've never had a very good team. When you look back in recent history, they made the playoffs once in 11 years. And that one year that they made the playoffs, they were eliminated in 5 games in the very first round. So to me, it may be a more fact that they haven't had quality hockey teams there for a long period of time. And that's why they didn't get the fan support in Glendale. But, that's another story. Gary Bettman seems very, very eager to want to keep the team in Arizona. And I'm sure he'll try and make some ways to see if he can keep the team there now, although it's not looking very positive in that manner today. But Bettman, I've always wondered why Bettman wanted to keep the team in Phoenix, even though they don't draw very good crowds and that sort of thing. But I understand that their television ratings on the NHL network there, like ESPN and TNT, is one of the highest in the United States. So that may be a lot of Canadians that are down there in the wintertime watching the games on TV that allow those ratings, but they don't go out to go to the game. So it's going to be real interesting to see now what transpires there, but it'll be, all winter this year, I think, when they'll be doing the negotiation with potential future cities.
Can I ask, in all of your years, you've been in, I imagine, every NHL arena multiple times. Did you ever call an NHL game in an arena as small as 5,000 seats? That would have been the smallest?
Not in the NHL. I'm just trying to think here for a minute. The smallest game in the NHL that I ever called was in the Corral here in Calgary, and that one had a seating for a capacity for a little better than 7,000. So. And of course, that's where the Flames played for their first 3 years in Calgary in the Corral, and that was a very intimidating building for the opposing teams. The crowd was basically right on top of the players on the ice. and those boards were higher than the normal boards in the NHL. And when the Flames were here in those first 3 years, they had a very big, very physical team. And so they had a huge advantage playing in the Corral. And I think the first year that the team was here in the 80-81 season, they lost only 5 regular season games in the Corral. So and then went on to have a run in the playoffs where they won the first 2 rounds before being eliminated. But yeah, it was a great facility to broadcast a hockey game from, though, as a broadcaster, because you were practically right on top of the play. It was easy to pick out the numbers, how you identify the players. But the only other building in the NHL that would be, in my time, that would be small was when Tampa first came in the league. They played in a very small arena, but I believe the seating capacity there was around 9,000. And then they moved from there to the baseball stadium where the Tampa Bay Rays play now. And that was incredible there. I mean, that had seating capacity for about 45 to 50,000 seats. And the arena was stuck in the middle of the baseball field. And they played there for 3 or 4 years before they built the arena that they presently play in. And also when San Jose came in the first year in the league there, the first couple of years there, while they were building their new arena in San Jose, they played in the old arena in San Francisco, the Cow Palace. And that one had a small seating capacity as well, but I think it was more like 10,000 there. They had a lot of horse shows there and other activities. So there was constantly a smell in that building that was not hockey conducive. Let's put it that way. But again, another interesting spot.
You mentioned the high boards in the Corral. Jamie McCowan told me once that it was like you could count on a visiting player falling over those boards at least once a game. Can you corroborate that? Did you see anyone eat it? Like expecting?
Yeah,
that's
true.
Sooner?
That did happen. Yeah. Usually, but once a game there'd be somebody crawling over there. Yeah, no, those big boards, they were really high by NHL standards. And I don't know of any other arena that I was in that had boards that high. But and of course that Flame team was so big that first year when they came from Atlanta, and the second and third year as well, that they were a very team that intimidated teams between the way the team played and the way the building was. It was a huge advantage for the Flames.
It's crazy. Sorry, I know, Danny, it's a little off topic, but I've gone through some of the footage from when the Flames first came here, and a lot of those players who had been in Atlanta actually really didn't want to leave Atlanta. Even though there wasn't, that much fan support or anything, they really liked the lifestyle down there, and they weren't sure of Calgary at first, and it changed pretty quickly, I think.
No, you're absolutely right. There were a lot of the players that came here that would have preferably wanted to stay in Atlanta, and I guess they didn't draw crowds very well, but it was, I believe it was the climate that they have in Atlanta, plus the people in Atlanta. They seemed to facilitate very well with them at that particular time, and I don't know if they had an NBA team at that time or not there. I know they did have a Major League Baseball team there, but I'm not too sure about the basketball. But anyway, the hockey team, they were well taken care of in Atlanta from that standpoint. Away from the game, they seemed to enjoy themselves, but then these people didn't come to the arena for the games. I remember I was broadcasting for the Toronto Maple Leafs in the 1978-79 season. And in the first round, the Maple Leafs and the Flames, the Atlanta Flames, played in a playoff series. And it was a best 2 out of 3 series, with the first game was played in Atlanta. And I remember going there, and the building wasn't half full, which was incredible to look around that building and see it, how small a crowd it had for an important playoff game. And of course, the Atlanta Flames lost that game. Then they went to Toronto for the next game, and the Maple Leafs won that one to eliminate them. And then the next year, they stayed in Atlanta for the 79-80 season, and didn't have much success that year. And again, the crowds weren't coming, and that's when everything got into play to move them here to Calgary, which certainly were very beneficial for. But yeah, but the players, you're right, guys like Willie Platt and Eric Vale and a few other guys there, Brad Marsh and those guys, they really liked it in Atlanta. And, they didn't really want to come to Calgary at the time. And some of those guys didn't stay here very long either. As I recall, Willie Plutt got traded a couple of years later, and the same with Eric Vale, and Brad Marsh, I think, stayed here an extra year before he got traded. Bob Murdoch was another guy that was here with them from Atlanta, got traded, and then then Lanny McDonald came here, and the whole situation changed. The Flames started building through the draft, and that got them to the team that ultimately would go to the Stanley Cup final in '86 and again in '89. So.
We have this whole list of things we want to ask you, but just since you brought it up, you mentioned the corral being so intimidating for opposing teams. Was there another rink that really stands out as being there was a real home ice advantage in your time?
I would say the Chicago Stadium was a building that was intimidating for the opposing teams. It was a building that was always full. They got great crowds in an old building, and the way it was built, the noise level in there was much higher than any other building in the NHL at that particular point in time. And the crowds would be into it. They do a lot of drinking there, and they'd be very very noisy as the course of the game went along, and made it really really loud in that building. And I think that. It proved to be a little bit of an intimidation to the opposing teams coming in there. Also, the visiting teams also to get on the ice had to walk up about 10 steps with their skates on to get onto the ice, because it was a dressing room at that down in the basement basically, while the home team didn't have to do that. So those were little things that I think helped aid the Blackhawks when they played in that old building there in Chicago, the stadium. It was also a great building to broadcast games from because of that noise level that I was talking about, and also had an excellent broadcast location. The only thing I didn't like about it is that you had to walk up 322 steps to get to our broadcast location, because there's no elevator or escalators in the building. So when they got into the new stadium, I liked it better because they had an elevator there to get us up to where we worked from.
That is amazing. One of the things Rob told me, he said, no matter what day it is, ask Peter this date in Calgary Flames history, and you're going to have something to tell me. So we're here. It is May 17th. Give me an anecdote from Flames history.
Well, this is an interesting one because it has something to do with all three times that the Flames went to the Stanley Cup Finals. Okay. In 1986, on this date, the Flames had a game in St. Louis and won the game 2-1, had a game against St. Louis here in Calgary and won the game 2-1, and that was Game 7 of their playoff series against the Chicago Blackhawks, the St. Louis Blues. The Blues had won Game 6 in St. Louis. They had come from behind. The Flames were ahead 8-5 the Flames were ahead by a score of 6-3 in that game with about 10 minutes left to go in the third period, when St. Louis came back to tie the game and then win it in overtime. And that forced the series to go back to Calgary for a Game 7. There was a huge snowstorm that came in just after the Blues arrived with their flight from St. Louis, arrived at the Calgary airport, and this storm started. It snowed for 36 hours, which is hard to believe that it snowed for 36 hours here in Calgary in May the 17th. But that was indeed the fact. And then they played the game, and Colin Patterson scored the winning goal in that 2-1 victory. And then, of course, that was on the 17th. Then on the 19th, the Stanley Cup Finals started. There was just one day between the end of that series and the start of the Stanley Cup Finals in which the Flames played against Montreal. And Montreal came into Calgary, played the first game. The Flames won that game 5-2, but then would lose the next 4 games. And after that series was concluded during the offseason, they came up with what they called the Cliff Fletcher rule. And that rule was that the Stanley Cup Finals would only start at least 3 days after the end of the conference finals or the semifinal series. Now, going back to 1989, which of course was the year the Flames won the Stanley Cup, on this May the 17th date, the Flames lost here in the Saddledome 4-2 to Montreal, and that was tied the series at 1-1. And then Montreal would win the third game of that series when they went back to Montreal to take a 2-1 series lead. And things started looking a little bit difficult for Flames, but they turned that around and would win the next 3 games and win the Stanley Cup on May the 25th. Now, also in 2004, when the Flames went to the Stanley Cup final. On this date, they won 3-0 in San Jose to grab a 3-2 lead in that conference final series against the San Jose Sharks. It was the first time in that series that the home team had, the Flames won that game 3-0. Mika Kiprasov got the shutout. It was his fourth shutout of the playoffs, and he ended up having 5 shutouts in that. And then a couple of days later, they would come to Calgary. Flames would win 3-1. They would be the first home team to win a game in that series because it was a road team had won each of the first 5 games before the Flames came back home to wrap that series up in winning game number 6. And that was the 8th road win the Flames had in that year in their march to the Stanley Cup. They ended up winning 10 games on the road that year, and that tied an NHL record for most road games won in the Stanley Cup playoffs. So it's safe to say if they'd won another home game or so, they might have won the Stanley Cup. They were better on the road than they were at home, believe it or not, during that run in 2004.
I have a question for you about the coach of those teams. I've heard that Badger Bob Johnson was very superstitious about where he would do the show with you at the Saddle Dome. Is that true?
Yes, Bob was extremely superstitious, not only about everything, and always an upbeat guy, always positive. I never met a person that as upbeat as Bob Johnson was, but he was extremely, extremely superstitious. So I used to do a coach's show with him that we would usually record the morning of the game that the Flames are going to play that night, and so. If the Flames were winning, had won the game previously, we'd have to go back to the same spot that we were for the previous coach's show that we did. And so a couple of ones that stand out for me, one was the fact that he one winning streak the Flames had. We were doing the coach's show from the Zamboni. He would sit on the Zamboni, and I'd stand there beside him with the microphone and ask him the questions, and he'd answer them. So the Flames, we did start at that at the Saddle Dome, so that was okay. So then we were gone the road. We had a game, I believe it was in Detroit, and the winning streak had gone to 4 or 5 games at that point in time. And Bob insisted that we had to do the coach's show from the Zamboni in the Joe Louis Arena. So we have to go over, and Bob steps up. There's nobody around where the Zamboni is located. It's off the ice. And so he gets up and he sits in it. And all of a sudden, just as we're getting to start the interview, one of the attendants there at the arena comes over and asks him what he's doing sitting there. And he said, just let me sit here for 5 minutes. I want to talk to this guy from here. So they granted him permission to do that, not knowing why he wanted to stay there. So another interesting one was after the winning streak was going off, the team was going for its 30th win, or 35th win in this particular case, in the old building in Buffalo. You had to walk up 35 rows to sit in the seats on the 35th row, that the Flames were going for their 35th win. And so I remember going up there in the old building in Buffalo with them, walking up those steps, and then we get there, and I sit there, I said, I don't want to wish anything bad on the team, but I hope this winning streak doesn't last long. And so, but they did last for another 2 or 3 games. Another interesting one was in Vancouver, in the old building in Vancouver. This one we had to do about an hour and a half before the game. And so we'd been doing the previous couple had been done in the penalty box. So Bob says, well, we're going to do this one in the penalty box. So I said, okay. So we get out, we walk across the ice from the players' bench where it is, across the ice, over to the other side to the penalty box. Now the penalty box was locked. The door was locked. So Bob gets up on the boards and puts his legs over the glass and steps down inside the penalty box. He climbs in, and then he unlocks the door for me to get in. So I'm there, and I'm thinking, my gosh, hopefully nobody sees us do this because they're going to think we're crazy. So anyway, we do the show, and then we walk across the ice back to the dressing room area. And so I get up to the broadcast booth a little while after that, and Jim Robson, who was the Vancouver Canucks broadcaster at that time, he says to me, what were you and Johnson doing, climbing over the glass to get into the penalty box? I said, you don't want to know. So those were just some of them. Now, the one where we had the most success, Flames winning games, where the coach's show has done the most, was in the boiler room at the Saddle Dome. In fact, I told Daryl Sutter about going into the last 2 or 3 weeks of the season that maybe if he does a coaching show, he should do it in the boiler room. They might be able to get some wins and get into the playoffs. So I don't know if Daryl took my advice or not. But yeah, he was an interesting guy.
For comment on that one.
We've only got you for a couple more minutes here. I do have to ask, the Flames are drafting 16th in the NHL draft this season. Is that a spot where they've had success in the past?
Well, unfortunately, it has not been a successful spot for the Flames to draft, be it in Atlanta or in Calgary. The most recent one was in 2017 when the Flames drafted Juuso Valimaki. And, of course, I'm sure you remember of Valimaki and his short term here with the Flames. It seemed that soon after he was drafted, he ended up with a bunch of injuries, and he could never really get his game going, and ultimately was traded last fall to Arizona, where he had himself a pretty decent season there. And but he obviously didn't turn out as well as he would have liked. And then the other guy in Calgary that the Flames drafted number 16 overall was in 1986 when they drafted George Palawa from Bemidji High School in Minnesota. He had just been named the Minnesota High School Player of the Year. And he was drafted by the Flames at the draft that year. That was in Montreal. I well remember the time. Afterwards, after the draft was held at the Montreal Forum, after that, went back to the Sheraton Hotel where the Flames were, and which is typically what they do. They have the players that they draft come into the hospitality room there, and they have some food and a little bit of drink. And this is the first time that I got to meet George Palawa, other than the interview I did with him on the floor of the Forum. And he was a real interesting guy. Like he was 18 years old, but when you talked to him, I think you were talking to someone that was 25. He was very, very mature for his years. And, we got to see him a little bit later on. Gary Suter that year was named the Rookie of the Year in the NHL. So he was there as well. And Gary and I would stand back and have conversation with him. And later on, we would join up with him outside of the Forum when we went to an establishment there. And he looked old enough. He was able to get in there, even though he was only 18 years of age. And unfortunately, 3 weeks before training camp that year, he was killed in an automobile accident that he was driving in Minnesota, and when he had the accident and died immediately on the scene. That was about 3 weeks before he was come to his first NHL training camp with the Flames. And talking to people who had seen him play, they felt that in time that he was going to become a very good NHLer, but unfortunately never got the opportunity to see that through with the unfortunate death that he got way, way too young in life. But a very interesting guy.
Well,
and lots of confidence in his abilities. It was just that short time that we had the opportunity to be around him.
Well, thank you for telling that story.
And then, of course, the Flames drafted one guy. 16th in the Atlanta days back in 1973 when they took Vic Mercakita, who played high school hockey, and he got to play 2 games with the Atlanta Flames. Didn't get any points. But earlier on in his career, he played 3 games with the Calgary Cowboys in the Western Hockey League, and he didn't get any points in those games. But he never did get to play here with the Calgary Flames. He had those 2 games in Atlanta. So 16 has not been a good spot for the team so far when they've drafted, but hopefully that'll change this time around.
Fascinating. All right, we've only got you for about 1 or 2 more minutes here. I'm just going to ask, who are you taking in the conference finals?
Well, I've been running my bracket right through the playoffs so far. In the first round, I had 8 out of 5 right. In the second round, I had 2 out of 5 right. So now we're going to the finals with all these teams from Sunshine States playing. The first time ever that 4 Sunshine States teams are playing into the Final Four in the National League. And when I look at it, I got to think that the series in the East, Carolina is going to win that. I just think that Rob Brindamore has done such an excellent job of coaching that team, and they listen to him, play the style that he wants to play. They're playing without 3 of their top forwards who are out with injuries. One of them may be back, I understand, at some point in this upcoming series, but that they've gone this far I got a feeling that they're going to knock off Florida, even though Matthew Tkachuk, the former Flame, has done a tremendous job in getting the Panthers where they are right now with some help from a number of his teammates. And then when it comes to the Dallas series against Vegas, that one is really a tight one. I think that Dallas has a great defense, a little bit better defensively than Vegas, but Vegas a little bit better on the offensive side. So when you look at it and you're comparing the goaltenders, Ottinger, to me, is the better of the two goaltenders for that series. So I'll pick them to win that round and advance to the Stanley Cup final. But there have been so many upsets so far, anything's possible.
Good for me. I mean, next time, I'm out of time now, but I have a million questions for you about hockey in the Maritimes. I think we can get into some good stuff with those stories.
Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead.
Peter, this was honestly absolutely incredible. Like I had this list of things and we got through maybe a third of them. This is honestly an honor to have you on. Thank you so much for taking the time. We've got to get you back next time. This is so much fun for both me and Cami, I know.
Well, it's been a fun as well. You folks enjoy the rest of the day, and we'll come back another time, have some maritime hockey stories.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thanks,
Looking
Peter.
forward to it.
Okay. All right. Okay.
Wow. That was
I could listen to
amazing.
him talk forever.
That was amazing.
I know you're still here, Peter, but I could listen to you talk forever.
That was absolutely incredible. What an honor, honestly. Both of us have been covering sports in this town for a long time. I've got to do an ad read, but I don't actually have the ad read. I've just been told that with Peter Maher was brought to you by Ski Cellar Snowboard and skicellarsnowboard.com. That's my first ever ad read. I don't really have much to add. I think we nailed it. You have a better view of the door. Is Salim here?
Yeah, he's here.
Okay. It'd be good if we could get Salim in here. Not sure what he's doing, but yeah. Anyways, that was amazing. Honestly, Peter's just got an incredible perspective. He did not wear a suit.
Actually, he dressed like you.
He did.
That
Anyways, we have Salim Valji. He is getting set up from TSN.
hey,
Tisson?
the
He is
sports
on.
network.
In front of the green
I wanted
screen.
to honestly, I was thinking about it, but like I got my suit fixed in yesterday because I was on Jay's show, and then I was like, I wonder how similar Danny and our outfits are gonna be today. And I knew that like Pinder had the beanie and like someone else, Dean had the glasses, so I figured I'd try to blend in a little bit in my new environment.
with the Nation Network.
Yeah,
crew. Yeah. Now let's remember that I declared the Toque season was over in like mid-April.
You have a lot of declarations though, Danny. I can't keep up with them. You were going to do a pink off with Julian. That was a declaration.
Okay, so we were going to do a pink off because both Julian and I wear Julian McKenzie from The Athletic wear a lot of pink. The reason we didn't do it is because the Flames missed the playoffs, so it felt inappropriate to come dressed in full pink.
Daryl's last press conference.
Daryl's
and you
last
guys
press
show
conference
up
just-
like that.
Yeah, so we canceled that.
I'm sorry, is Calgary so smoky because your style is so fire, you do?
Holy Cami, got the lines going. I knew it was worth the 10-minute drive over here today.
You want another good line? Welcome to the Oodle Noodle studio for the first time, pal.
Yeah, this is great. I was, you know what? Like I was like thinking because Northwest and Southwest, like I was crossing my
confused by
fingers.
that?
Sorry, a little bit, but like I knew it was in Marda Loop, but you didn't specify whether it was Northwest or Southwest. So I was like crossing my fingers that what I read that it was here was.
I was just nervous because good luck parking in this
Yes,
neighborhood.
yes,
Oh my
yes,
God, the
that
whole
as
thing's
well.
under
That as
construction.
well. That as well.
crazy.
I had
I
to
have
go
parked
like
right out front every single time I've come here.
You just get lucky, hey?
Like 4 blocks up that way. I've got to go to Marta Brewing Company after this.
nice.
So my car will likely be staying there overnight. Think it should be good. Salim, how are you? What is keeping you busy here in mid-May 2023?
Mid-May 2023. Well, getting immersed in CFL season again. Obviously, the stamps and trying to kind of get back into that. And we have a lot more of work, I guess, with like the franchise changing over cultures a little bit, with Bo no longer being there and Dickinson having some added responsibilities. So just doing my homework on that front. paying attention to what's going on around the world of hockey, and I've done some CHL ratings, so that's been fun trying to humanize those young players as they kind of begin their quests for the Memorial Cup. And obviously there's a big search right now going on for the next leader of the Flames hockey operations. So
it's crazy, right? Like we did this whole, at the start of the show, we were just like, hey, there's a bunch of stuff happening, Roughnecks, Wranglers, Cavalry, all this stuff in Calgary. But like, at the same time, I'm sitting here. I know you guys are both probably the same, and it's just, well, there's this bomb that's about to drop.
Yeah,
the GM is. Then it's going to be the head coach, as Peter was saying. Then we got draft stuff. Then we have to figure out these 7 guys who could be.
That's like extended. A third of your roster. Yeah, that's crazy.
It's like it's really, really going to be busy. It's just nothing happens. Like we're in this, like it's the calm before the storm in a lot of ways in terms of the Flames coverage. I feel like. Yeah,
definitely, and I think by this time next week we'll know who that leader is. I think they're winding down their search, and it's gonna be fascinating because you've got a third of your roster and not just like bottom 6 players, like as I'm sure you've discussed at length and we have at length, like a top line center.
Yeah, we're gonna get into it here.
But it's someone brand new putting their stamp on the organization, and it might be someone that's never been a GM like Craig Conroy, and it'll be fascinating to see because we all like I think Tree is the only GM I've ever dealt with on a consistent basis. I imagine it's the same. Like, did you either of you get like the Feaster era?
I sat in the Saddledome press box.
Okay.
4 feet from Dave Feaster.
Okay, cool.
He was in the like fancy box. With,
okay.
Executive.
I was a student,
That's
and
the
students
closest
weren't allowed in.
Okay, that's fair.
But then Peter just posited, what if Treliving just decides to come back? Still in town.
I don't think it's a possibility.
I feel like after they've denied him permission, I can't imagine. We're going to get into that too.
We got to go one step at a time.
Sure, yeah.
I want to ask you because, okay, so for the record, we play on the same slow pitch team, which I've got a rant that I want to go on.
Neither of us are carrying that team, full disclosure.
I'm okay. I'm okay.
I've only played once, but yeah.
Either way, we're going to get into slow pitch at some point.
Yeah,
I got something to say about people who take walks.
The Moneyball hits Calgary media slow pitch.
Yes,
I'm
sorry.
Headline there.
This is the only thing I'm going to say about slow pitch, and then we're going to move on and never bring it up again. If you are playing recreational slow pitch and you are an adult and you take a walk, I'm trying not to swear, but like, you're a dork. You're a friggin' nerdlinger. Like, don't take walks. You are not paying $50 to $60 to show that you have a good eye. You were paying the money to swing the bat. The team that we played on Monday took probably grown men took like 7 or 8 walks in the game. And it was like, cool, you guys, you're beating us, but like, you're losers. And I just want to like go on record. It is recreational slow pitch. Swing the friggin' bat. I'm done with these guys. That's all I'm going to say. We will move on.
There's the one hardo on every team.
I think there were a bunch of them. It wasn't one on this team.
Fast sunglasses.
When my 4-year-old nephew shows patience at the plate, I'm like, clap. Good for you. You are an adult. Swing.
Well, you would hate playing with me then, because my strategy has always, when I was younger, I had to play on guys' teams. No girls team in a town of like, 3,000 people?
Yeah.
No, the strategy, lean in, get hit, take your base.
Yeah, I mean, do what you gotta do. Hey,
take the L.
I mean, I don't think at this level it's quite the same.
Well, okay. Well, I can swing the bat now, Danny, and I can bet I'm better than you.
Probably, and
we're probably gonna need subs on Monday, so it's your first opportunity.
I'll be in Metropolitan Scottsdale.
Oh,
I'll be sure to ask Coyotes fans what they think about what's what down there. I'll report back.
I am, as technically the host, I am going to try to bring us back in every once in a while when we inevitably just. It's worth noting, like we hike together, we drink together, like we're friends.
We're buds.
I'm going to try to keep it on sports topics because we could talk about what you're doing in Arizona, and it sounds like a lot of fun, but not just yet.
I'm going to black out a tooth. Tell us about the Wranglers.
Right now, I gotta go Flames GM stuff. I would still put my money on Craig Conroy as the GM with Jerome McGinn left for 1 year in a sort of advisory role and then coming on more full-time when he finishes in the Okanagan. Do you think I'm wrong?
I think, okay, so they had a pretty long initial list of close to 40 people. They talked to a lot of human beings, and I don't think that was just to show Murray Edwards sort of a fake search. Like, I think they were really invested in getting different opinions, which is extremely important when winning a playoff series is a once-a-decade event for you, right? And it has been here for a long time. I'm less convinced now than before that it's going to be Conroy, but I still think he's the favorite. I look at the number of outside voices that they've talked to and the desperate need to rejig how you do things. And it's not just trades or contracts, but it's the approach to advanced stats. It's the relationship between front office and coaching staff, which you got to think cannot get lower than it was this past season. So I think they're desperate for some outside opinions, and they've gotten an awful lot of them. I still think Conroy's the front runner, but I'm less convinced that he's going to get the job now than I was, say, a week ago. So
when you say outside voices, do you just simply mean like outside of CSEC, or are they also branching out to someone who may not have been a GM in hockey before?
I think they've done that a lot. There have been several, I think, people that have not been GMs before that they've consulted with or at least talked to. I know that they've talked to at least one player agent as well. So I think what happened in Montreal with Kent Hughes becoming the GM and them radically changing the organization from top to bottom, whether it was incorporating advanced stats or building out their skills development program, or the way that they structure contracts, or even the way that they trade for someone like Kirby Dach, like that opened a lot of eyes around the National Hockey League. If I'm not mistaken, Kent Hughes was the first former agent to become a general manager in quite some time in the National Hockey League. And I think that's opened eyes, including here in Calgary. So that's a route that I'm really intrigued if they go down the road in and figure out, hey, we've got to change how we do things over here. I'm sure we'll get into competitive windows and stuff later on, but how you maximize this team. I think Conroy would be such a great fit because not only is he a really accomplished hockey person, like I think you need someone that loves the city of Calgary and bleeds it and knows what we all know in this room, which is that it's a pretty awesome place. Because like Danny, you asked John Bean at the press conference, why is it that so many people are leaving, and is it something that worries you? And that is a reality here, right? Like there is a perception issue here 100%. And not only is Conroy paying his dues and a really smart hockey mind, but he also loves Calgary, and that cannot be understated in all of this, I don't think. So
Well, Tree was definitely a guy who loved the city, went to bat for the city, especially when people were questioning whether this is a place where players would have played. He's like, you cannot step on my city like that. He didn't pull any punches. So, but I'm curious, like, even with Daddy, I know you think it's okay and just fine that the Flames are saying Rhett can't talk to anyone. No, not that first. But like just seeing the dysfunction at that press conference, because it didn't seem like everyone from CSEC was completely on the same page.
Yeah.
With all those candidates who've been spoken to, is Calgary a desirable place to hold this role?
I think if you look at the history over here, and no disrespect to any of these people, and we've talked about it, Glenn Gulletson, Bob Hartley, Bill Peters, Jeff Ward, I might be missing some else, but they're coaches here that tend not to get jobs after they're done in Calgary. Jay Feaster did not get another management hockey ops job after he left the organization. And I think, like, ideally you want someone that has options, right? You want someone that, hey, you know what? I had a choice between like Carolina and Calgary, and I chose Calgary for these reasons. Like, you want someone that's in demand around the league. And right now, I'm not convinced that if someone has multiple options, they would choose Calgary. And it's got nothing to do with the rink or the roster or the pressure or anything like that. I think it's got more to do with how do you manage ownership over here? Because Danny and Cami, like you heard in that press conference, there were a lot of interesting tidbits that came out that show just how tricky it can be to manage this ownership group, whether it was John being a little bit combative with some of the responses, or we don't believe in a rebuild, or Brad deciding even himself that this wasn't a situation he wanted to continue. That opens eyes around the league, and the news yesterday that was confirmed that they are playing hardball with Tree on his ability to move on and pursue other employment. Yeah, we can get into that, but I don't think this is as desirable a place right now as they want it to be. And those are just a few of the reasons. And I think they've got to work on the public relations element of, refining your message and delivering it with some sort of smiles or genuineness, because there is a perception issue here right now for sure.
You're bracing for this right now.
I know,
But if
for
you're
sure.
watching the YouTube stream, if you can see Danny revving his goddamn engine over there, flexing, this is how I like to imagine
There's
he
like
prepares.
the biggest volcano. The biggest volcano in Alberta right now is actually a couple of feet.
Yeah, this
from
is
us.
Danny getting ready to go on like a storm.
This suggestion
Doing like
that
the Aaron
Calgary
Judge
Flames
side eye.
should be nice to Brad Treliving. Dude, you turned down the contract extension. You are still under contract. This is a competitive business about wins and losses. Brad Treliving should not be allowed. There's zero chance I would be allowing him to speak to everyone. What advantage does that give to you? People on Twitter say you're nice? People on Twitter, people around the league are like, well, it's a good thing that they put themselves at a competitive disadvantage by being nice to Brad Treliving. This is a cutthroat industry. Brad, I'm sorry. I have all the respect in the world for Brad Treliving, but the Calgary Flames need to, until after the draft, it was what Peter Maher was saying. Literally, Brad probably knows a lot about what they're thinking in terms of the draft. You can't let him go to another team. That puts you at a competitive disadvantage. This is, again, I'm just going to keep talking about my 4-year-old nephew. With him, it's not if you win or lose, it's how you play the game. This is professional hockey. I cannot fathom why it matters that they are being quote unquote mean to Brad Treliving. They need to put themselves in the best possible position to win, and having Brad go and interview and have that information about their strategy over the next couple months puts them at a disadvantage, and there's no way they should do it.
That's fair. My counterpoint is, okay, so, and I agree, it's cutthroat. This is professional sports. There's a reason why these athletes and executives are making a lot more money than we are. My counterpoint is this. We talk about the perception issues in Calgary. Tkachuk, Gaudreau elected to move on. Treliving did as well. I think there was rumblings that there were other players, obviously at the press conference. We saw Backlund and Lindholm. You have a perception issue over here, and it's rare that they've brought in the best candidates for these jobs. Treliving, I think, turned out way better than anyone would have thought in his ability to do the job, manage up, everything like that. So I think you're trading. Okay, so you're being mean to Brad, sure. Or you know what? You're just honoring the what's on the paper. You're not even being mean. You're honoring what's on the paper. But I think by doing that, you're trading, honoring that for further perceptions that you don't treat people well, you don't reward. You don't.
But it's the assumption that not allowing him to speak with these other teams and interview and accept jobs is not treating him well. That's what I reject. I think that they're literally treating him as a professional who signed a contract, and he's still under contract.
What does that do?
When I sign a non-compete clause and then go try to work for someone other than Post Media after I quit, they're not being bad to me by holding me to the non-compete clause. That's not the perception of that. I signed that. I agreed to that. I don't think the Flames are doing a single thing wrong. Again, all of this is alleged, although I believe the reporters, but the perception to me, if they allowed him to do it, is that they're an organization that doesn't take winning seriously enough.
Oh, I don't think that. I think the perception is, you know what? We had this guy for close to a decade. He did probably above and beyond what we thought. People notice when you don't treat people classily on the way out, right? And if you're let's say, okay, there are
signing,
a few,
offering him a contract to extend, which he declined.
I mean,
he's the one on the way out. They didn't push him out.
I think they kind of did.
Walk, according to Don Maloney, said that he wanted to walk because he needed a break from being a general manager, and now he's saying, "Oh, I want to go be a general manager with another team." I think the Flames are in the.
And I know a fan highlighted that quote. I think Brad, I imagine he wants to get back into it as quickly as possible. I don't think he had his eyes on a break quite like maybe Kyle Dubas said he did the other day. But what does that tell, say, Eric Tulsky? You've got opportunities here, there, everywhere. You want good people to come to your organization, and there are already strong perceptions about how they treat staff and things like that. And this is how you go about with the exit of probably the best general manager in your franchise's history, a guy that steered you through some awful tough times, had to manage up in a lot of different ways, was by all accounts a marvelous boss behind the scenes. I get that it's on paper, and this is not about being mean or nice. It's a bad business decision, because with this going out there and Pierre LeBrun reporting it and other people talking about it, those prospective candidates, some of whom might have opportunities elsewhere, might say, you know what, this doesn't look like a situation. We already kind of know the owner has a good say in hockey ops.
If your prospective general manager is worried about what's going to happen when they leave,
Sure.
then it's the wrong prospective general manager. It's not the guy you should be hiring.
Cami, you're tiebreaker on this.
Well, no, it's funny. I literally told Cami, I was like, we're not going to fight about it. And here we are.
We've had disagreements before.
100%. We'll definitely be having beers later.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
So,
We really
I'll
wanna
be the
talk
third
about-
wheel on your date after all this. So,
well, you're not supposed to say that.
bro, date.
Cami, carry on.
We're going to change the subject. Kind of. If you really want to talk about an acrimonious split, I'm quoting the Athletic article here just to try to get some of the details back in my head. Mr. John Chayka leaving the Arizona Coyotes.
Oh, right.
Remember, he was suspended through the end of 2021 for conduct detrimental to the league.
Yeah.
That was related to his conversations with another organization and his desire to pursue a potential job elsewhere.
Interesting. I kind of forgot about that. I mean, it doesn't change my opinion.
Yeah,
but
like 18 months after it happened, he did come out and he had nice things to say about the organization and the players, but the organization, like they let it all hang out in their statement. They said they were disappointed, and it was a messy situation, as most things with Arizona are. But I guess that's kind of the foil to Danny's point that when you're under contract, you can't be doing it. Can I see the argument for the Flames saying like,
Yeah, I mean, I'm not pretending
whatever,
it's
it's
not
a
a-
month, go. Don't tell him any of the good stuff. I could see that happen. I can see
and
both
there are
sides happening.
clauses in that regard that prevent the competitive angle from getting leaked out. It's just, and I get that it's common in business and everything, but if you're around the league and you're looking at this unfold in this manner, it looks bad on your organization that already has some image maintenance it's got to do at the moment. So it's, and like, this is kind of a weird thing I was thinking about on the drive here, but the players respected and liked Brad a lot. And if you're one of them and you see a guy that is kind of not able to move on, like, I don't know how that would, if players would think about that, but like you talked about, like they're going to have a new boss to report to, a couple of new bosses.
Yeah,
And
and if it's Craig Conroy, you think they're going to be that worried about whether
Probably
Brad
not, no.
Brad had to wait a month and a half before interviewing?
no, I guess it's just the perception that continues that this organization,
And we don't necessarily share that perception, which is part of it.
sure.
Which is part of it. And like, again, I see your point. Like, ultimately, you know,
Like, go ahead.
if I lived in a world where the Easter Bunny was real and everything was sunshine and roses, I would want Brad Treliving to get exactly what he wanted as well.
And I like, by the way, I don't have like any stake in, like, I ate at Boston Pizza yesterday, but I don't have any stake in the empire. I wish I did.
Yesterday. What did he get?
I was with my cousins. They got dessert. I got like the chicken wings. So yeah, it was good. It was great food. The service was
17th?
solid.
Where
Is there one on 17th?
is it's still there? Isn't
We
it?
we
Maybe
went
they replaced
to
it with
we
the
went to
Pinners.
North Hill, but it was good. I hadn't seen my cousins in a little bit. They're accomplishing a lot more in their early 20s than I did, so it's a little bit. I was a little bit jealous, but
Also,
the boys are doing
How
well. So
sick would it be if we just revealed right now that actually you'd been bought off by Brad Treliving and Boston Pizza? And that you were
That'd be
just
pretty nuts,
pushing that agenda for that reason.
that is why I've been tweeting this whole time. I think from even a business standpoint, it's a calculation that the Flames aren't going to win. Like just let treat your people well and you'll attract more high quality people type of thing.
Yeah, until they're not your people because they declined to extend their contract with you. So they're not your people anymore. So you owe them nothing. Anyways, Cami, any other questions?
Oh, I'm still like deep in revisiting all this John Chayka stuff.
Yeah, like
That was ugly. Really ugly.
and to their credit, the Flames have not let like this get to that point or even close to it, even though there clearly seems to be sort of a
I think that Arizona situation serves to show you what the worst case scenario could be.
Arizona and worst case. What are you talking? Like that's such
know,
a
and that's never happened.
foreign concept to us. So.
Okay, let's move on. If Elias Lindholm, the new GM, gets in, Elias Lindholm, day one is like, nah, man, I'm not going to resign. At what point are you, like, what's your drop dead, got to trade Elias Lindholm date? Is it the draft? Is it start of training camp? Is it trade deadline? When do you think you have to get that trade done? And do you think, I guess I'm making the assumption that you think that you have to trade him, but what's your move there?
Okay, most important player at the moment, number one center on most teams. I think I would go till the deadline. Honestly, I know you might be able to get a little bit more for him in training camp or at the draft. I think this window that they have right now, where you've got a number one center at less than $5 million, you've got a pretty good defense core where no one's making an exorbitant amount. You have a lot of pieces, like a 73-point player. Toffoli's at what, $4.25 million? Like, you have a lot of these pieces under market value, thanks a little bit to the previous regime. I think you try to maximize that, and if things go off the rails like they did this season, or they don't take off, then you look at the trade deadline. I would go into next season with this roster kind of intact, and you assume that you might round out your bottom six. But I would wait until the trade deadline, honestly, and then I mean it's a tough situation, because if you're in first and you know that Lindholm's gonna pull a Gaudreau and walk, you're not getting anything for him, and then the questions continue about like Noah Hanifin. I think
You
would
have
be
to
second.
get something for him.
I think
You have to.
you do, but
I mean, just hope he doesn't go like full John Tavares and like rent out a hotel and just take meetings.
just the race for Elias Lindholm. But like this window, okay, what and you could get a boatload in terms of assets and stuff, but this window that you have right now where you've signed players for that specific opportunity, I wonder if you trade Lindholm in the offseason, you're not getting a number one center back. It's probably a futures package.
It should better be a futures package.
Yeah. So
But even then, how do you like fully commit to a rebuild when you have so
Yeah.
many expensive contracts on the books? It's almost like you need to. It's kind of like the San Jose Sharks, their situation a couple years ago, where it's like, we got one more year in this window. Like, you got to try.
you got to go for it. I think I'm leaning towards that.
I see the Golden Knights in the Western Conference Final missing the playoffs last year. Like, this is not, it's not out of the question. It's not impossible. Like, I'm not trying to claim that. I just think that, like, if you lost Valimaki, a first round pick,
For sure.
4-0. If you lose Gaudreau and Lindholm 4-0. Like, what are we doing here? There's asset management, and then there's asset management.
And that's where
bad.
maybe. Okay, so if Hanifin and Lindholm are your two big priorities, right? Like I imagine Backlund's up there, but Hanifin
I
and
think
Lindholm,
Hanifin's trade bait.
I think he could get you a fair bit. Like I would almost prioritize one of them, as regardless of where we are. I was basically say Hanifin, regardless of where we are.
Toffoli's on that list too, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
But like those two probably get you the most, because they're the youngest. They're fairly cost controlled given what they are. Hanifin has like a top 3 defenseman in this league right now. I would basically maybe top 4.
Okay.
But I would keep Lindholm, and I would use Hanifin as the chip that gets you that futures package that isn't as big as Lindholm, but replenishes the cupboard a little bit.
Lindholm has to be willing to stay, right? Like, that's when you say keep him, like, that's cool, but he just kept telling us he has one more year.
I know.
He
He did not sound enthusiastic.
And now things have changed around the Saddle Dome, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's entirely possible that I have no idea. I'm not trying to imply that I do.
I almost I think, and this is gonna like this probably doesn't make me sound very credible, but I think you forget the fact that he could walk, and you just say, we've got a number one center, one of the top 10 centers potentially in the league, top 15, at less than $5 million. We go into this season with that, and if we lose him, it sucks. But he's the product of a good hockey trade that we made. And if having him and losing him means that we get to, say, the second round of the playoffs or go even beyond that, then it's more than worth it. Like, he's almost your own trade deadline acquisition at that point. Like, I know that there's asset management, and frankly, the previous regime did not do a great job of that by the end of their tenure. But you also have a very good player at a very good number, and like, okay, you trade away Lindholm. Does that mean that all of a sudden you're dealing Huberdeau and Kadri, and you're really doing the word that John Bean hates? Like it doesn't mean like you're kickstarting the
But
rebuild. You can't. Like it's
can't trade
impossible.
those, yeah.
So they are between sort of a weird rock and a hard place where you can't quite rebuild, but you've got assets that could move on pretty quick here for very little. So
What's up, buddy?
we have a celebrity appearance here.
I'm stealing my bike helmet, friends.
Safety never takes a holiday, folks.
The rest of your show.
Yeah, a rock and a hard place, but then, like, there's literally the giant boulder that is allowing 2 of your 3 first liners from last season to walk away and getting nothing in return. I mean, that's brutal for this organization to have lost. If they lose Gaudreau and Lindholm for nothing, you just can't allow it to happen. I mean, you have to read the tea leaves and make that call based on what is realistic. And if you think you're going for a cup, sure.
I think that they think they're going for the cup, and I just like how many teams have had a number 1 center locked up at less than $5 million? Maybe I'm fixating too much on
I think
that.
you got a lot of guys who are primed for a bounce back as well. Shillington will be back in the mix, which will take some of the load off of Tanev, who really had some injury problems this season.
Yeah.
And I think it's dangerous. Like, I know that sometimes you have to say, like, okay, we need to look at historically what have we not done well, but it's also dangerous to just make a decision when you're trying to lump it all in together into one steaming pile of crap.
Yeah.
Like, sometimes you need to look at this issue right now in a bubble.
Yeah.
Are you talking about the Lindholm issue or
Lindholm,
like the
look
7?
at Lindholm in a bubble.
I look at a guy who can get me assets back, who didn't say he wouldn't resign, but
We kind of know
he wouldn't resign.
where he was leaning at that
For
point.
me, for me, it's just a no-brainer. You deal for the assets, and you've got Huberdeau, Kadri, you've got some big contracts there, and that's going to be tough to move on from. But like realistically, I'd rather have something than nothing. And at the end of the next season with Lindholm, you're going to have nothing if you keep him. And I'd rather have young assets. And I don't really see like
so okay, if they
understand the counter argument.
I just think you take the risk of like, okay, hold out till the trade deadline.
Fair enough.
Hold out till Christmas. They didn't get to Foley right away.
Yeah,
Or,
that was,
right
that
at
was
the trade
Valentine's
deadline.
Day.
Yeah.
I'll hear that. I just won't hear not trading him. And Peter's argument was he was like, the issue is you get lost within the season and say, all right, well, we're in second place in the Pacific right now. So you hold on to him because you can't sell the fans and sell him at the deadline. And he was like, that's why you do it in the offseason when you can just sort of take a sober look at where you stand, what the future of the franchise looks like, and make that call. That is where I stand. I also understand, like, I do understand the perspective of just go for it. I just don't think that realistically.
Well, I feel like the phrase "last dance" gets thrown around so much, but okay, you've got a third of like
last dance. The Bulls had won 5 championships at the time. What is this the last dance of? Like,
it's the second last dance since I got to Calgary in November 2020 because the first one was like Gaudreau. But okay, and it might be. I don't see a path to them rebuilding easily if they deal Lindholm, like I said, and. If you deal Lindholm, do you still expect to make the playoffs the next season, or like it does seem like playoff or bust, which kind of is in line with this ownership group. So what's the expectation on the ice if they deal Lindholm for young pieces?
I mean, you don't have Kadri is your first line center at that point. I mean, I don't think you can realistically say you're a cup contender.
No.
I think if you try to you're bringing in Peltier, Dewar's playing next year. Is there another forward who's super ready? I don't think Zari's
I imagine
there. Coronado probably plays. So those are 3 young guys, and plus you're probably trying to get at least one NHL ready guy under the age of 24 in a deal for Lindholm. So and then a couple sort of draft assets or prospects, but that's probably where you are. I mean, you got Cole Schwint played a little bit for Florida last season. You've got young guys who can come up. This Wranglers team has been exceptional. So yeah, I mean, I think. If Jacob Markstrom goes back to the form that he was in a year ago, I don't think it's out of the question that you could make the playoffs.
We're talking 2 seasons from now, not next season, right?
2 seasons. Well, I mean,
or okay, whenever would they deal
Lindholm?
Lindholm?
Resign Lindholm is a different question from whether you should trade him because that's not within your control, as far as I can tell. If you lose him for nothing, no, I don't.
Like, I think the comparison to Backlund is relevant because, like, you basically. You got Lindholm, like it's not like you dealt a ton for Lindholm. Like you got a few really good years out of the guy. So sure, it's losing an asset for nothing and young picks and prospects that you could have recouped. But this isn't, like if you lose Backlund, let's say the outcry is a lot less, right? Like you had him for a long time. He's one of the most celebrated players in this history. He's done an awful lot off the ice. I mean, maybe they're not quite the same comparison, but you got a lot out of Lindholm for the time that you had him, right? And maybe it is. I'm willing to let this go to the end of the season next season.
Try to think of another organization in the NHL where if we were looking at it from outsiders' perspective, we would be like, oh yeah, it's cool that they lost their first line center for nothing. Oh yeah, that's not a big deal. They went for it. They gambled. They went for it. They lost him. Oh, they also lost Johnny Gaudreau for nothing. It wouldn't happen.
two exceptional talents in like a 3-year
we
stretch.
wouldn't be like, that's okay. Like,
Imagine Toronto, like, and that's
oh my God. Toronto made the second round, and they're like, everyone's saying tear it down. Anyways, it is an interesting thing.
I think they're just turning into the Canucks because we don't know what they're doing.
Yeah, I mean, at least until we figure out who's going to be leading this whole thing. So
I'm low key obsessed with Elias Pettersson.
Which one?
hey, I was going to ask that. Yeah.
I did not realize he was as good as he is.
Where you been?
I knew he was good. I just didn't realize he was that good. And I don't know. I watched him a bunch late in the season because the Canucks weirdly weren't as bad as like their record said.
They were decent. Hey,
Yeah.
under Rick Tocchet, they had a good structure.
And I don't know, he blew my mind. I thought he was really good.
Abbotsford started to
No, I
get
think
everything
he's good.
together.
Oh yeah,
They were fun to watch.
yeah, that's true. Hey,
Yeah.
Do we have anything else Flames related?
I mean, hey, you're the host. I'm just here to hang out. What were we talking? We got through the number one center.
Oh, yeah.
What are the other questions around this franchise?
Because there's no questions around this
I
franchise.
guess the coach.
No,
but-
I mean, I think ultimately, like, I think this is what I was sort of saying earlier, where the issue with this Flames team is there's a million things to talk about, and none of them actually matter until they get the GM hired. So, like, we are in this sort of holding pattern a little
sure,
bit
yeah.
with the Flames, where, and again, I will say that personally, just because I like seeing people rewarded for years of service and hard work.
For sure.
I would be very happy to see Craig Conroy get
Definitely.
the job. And like, the player thing is interesting, but I sometimes think like there's not someone with a magic wand out there who's going to come in and reinvent the wheel in terms of how the Calgary Flames are run. So it's like, I think there's marginal differences between guys, but for me, it's like just Conroy, smart hockey mind
For
good
sure.
around the organization, super popular in the community, knows sort of the direction the team's been going, likely has some tweaks. For me, he's just a perfect hire, especially when you add like Ginla wouldn't have said what he did publicly if he wasn't interested.
For
right?
sure, yeah,
And
yeah.
to be perfectly honest, I don't think he would have said what he said publicly if the Flames weren't interested in him back. I think that like came from, you can read between the lines there a little bit. And
For sure.
I'd like those two. I'd like Jerome to be back part of the Calgary hockey community. And I think Conroy's done the work. So that is what I am like personally as a non-fan. That's what I would like to see happen, while also acknowledging that like as you said, they've talked to about 40 people, like, and I don't know that any of them are good or bad candidates, truthfully. I just like Conroy as a candidate, and I always have, and I want to see.
I do as well, but I think it's good that Don Maloney is really being thorough here, and getting as much outside feedback as he could about what's gone on here recently. I kind of wonder, I don't know if Maloney said that he would stick around as president of hockey ops when this is all said and done, but it seems like he's done a good job even of managing up, and sort of he was the guy that did that whole review that led to Sutter getting fired, and he was the one that sold ownership on that, and I can't imagine it's easy to do that. It seems like Maloney's done a good job in this new role early on, and I wonder if he remains in that capacity with the GM, whether it's Conroy or someone else has the hockey autonomy. But I agree. Craig is just such a great person to deal with as well. Like he exudes positivity, and the guy's traveled the world for this organization, and he's played a big role in some important moments, whether it was Gaudreau having the option to sign with any NHL team out of the first time he had the option to sign with any NHL team back at when he was at BU, and it was apparently Conroy that was the point person on that, and he's played a big role in some other prospect negotiations similar to that. So I hope he gets it. Like I think he's someone that exudes Calgary, and they need that. And plus the hockey stuff, you can't argue with that.
Do you think that in his interview process, he asks, hey guys, what happens in 7 years when I'm let go? Am I going to be allowed to interview with other teams before my
when I
contract is up or
resign
no?
After the Huberdeau deal ends, when I resign, will you let me out of my deal 6 weeks? I think that's a very important point.
It's an important question.
And if it's a no, what other options are there in other NHL markets that I can pursue? So
I'm glad I got this enormous water.
that's like a tourist water bottle.
I
That's
went
like
to
one
get
of
it.
those things you get in like
I'm out
hiking.
and I'm dying.
Do you want some?
Yeah.
I went
No.
to get.
Teamwork.
No, I'm sick.
I'm not sick. All right.
Now too many keyboards
Now I
around.
dropped the cap.
Too many keyboards around.
I went to grab
Yeah.
a little bottle of. We're just going to talk water brands here for a
Okay,
second.
okay.
So
I have some thoughts. I have some thoughts about water brands. So
I went to buy an Evian, and it was like half the size. It was $4.89, and and this was $2.49, and I can't taste the difference. So pure life, guys.
Do you remember the movie Superstar?
I don't.
It was like an SNL movie.
Oh, yeah,
Molly
yeah, yeah.
Shannon. It's like one of my favorite insults. Yes, one of my favorite insults of all time. Like the bitch in that show. Her name's Evian, and it's at one point like Mary Catherine Gallagher straight up like, at least my parents named me after a bottle of water.
that's pretty mild compared to the insults I've gotten for my name. So I respect that.
Well, okay, this is also
Don't
from,
insult
like,
Salim's name, guys.
Yeah.
God, it's smooth.
I have one more question about Connie. Get out.
Do it. I'm done.
No, I was just
Water.
curious, like, because we know him as a really gregarious guy. What's your read on his relationships? Because Mitch Love is a name we've been hearing a lot. What's your read on his relationship with Mitch Love and players on the Wranglers?
I honestly wouldn't know that. Because it's Brad Pascal, that's his baby, right? So
Yeah.
he's been running that team for a while. I think Conroy's been the point person for certain guys that had challenges with the coach. They would, instead of going to Tree, they would talk to Craig. So I think that speaks volumes about his relationship with players and how they viewed him as a little bit of a confidant in that regard, and that's important, especially given players that could walk. And that's a skill. Like I think Conroy's, because he was coached by Daryl and has such a strong kind of network within the organization, I think he was leaned on by certain people in that regard to be sort of a buffer in that area. So I think that's really a strong suit for him. But I assume Brad Pascal's got those Wranglers because he's just around there so often, and he's the one that assembled that team, that he would be the person. We haven't talked about Pascal.
I know. I
enough
want to say,
as-
like, I'm glad you said his name, because like we can't sleep on him.
No. Like, he's done a good job running that team, and even the decision to bring in Mitch Love. Like, the Flames have done a good, even with like Ryan Huska a couple of years ago, they've found talent away from the ice too, right? I don't think like Brad Treliving was a household name when he got this job, and he turned out pretty good. And even Huska and Love have done similar. So they've done a good job of finding talent and putting that talent in positions where they can succeed. So Brad's Pascal is definitely a name that we haven't maybe spoken about enough, but is a strong candidate too. So
You've been watching the Wranglers?
a little bit. I was at I think I've gone to 2 or 3 playoff games if there's this past postseason run. So yeah, they've been doing well.
Yeah. Has anyone stood out for either of you guys? I know we've all been at a couple games. Has there been a player who, like, I'll be honest with you, I did not go to Wranglers regular season games. I am not. I've said
Actually, went
this-
to quite a few. Adam Klapka has stepped up in playoffs in a way that I didn't expect it. I think Dryden Hunt has worked really well for them in playoffs. He's had some big goals. Jacob Peltier, I mean, obviously,
yeah.
he's just doing Jacob Peltier things. But on the other side of the ice, look out for Canmore product on Coachella Valley. Peltier's former fellow assistant captain and line mate on the Moncton Wildcats, Mr. Jeremy McKenna.
Oh yeah, is
He's
he
been
having a
doing
strong
really
series?
well for Coachella Valley. Yeah, undrafted, and
Oh wow.
yeah, he's done some time in the ECHL, and he's having a really good playoffs for the Firebirds.
That's awesome. I've liked, I mean, it's cliche, but Matthew Phillips has had a really good playoff. And the games I've seen, and I guess I didn't realize how involved he was in scrums and how fearless he is for such a small man, like stature wise. Like, he makes up for it, like, with his fearlessness and his willingness to attack the
He's
net.
super physical. Weird.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's something I didn't realize about his game.
No, that was something I learned. Yeah, they've had a good run. Like, Wolf had a tough night. The one game I was there last week where
The
he ended up
6-3.
Yeah, he ended up getting pulled, but the team's D zone coverage wasn't that great during that either. So I'd be intrigued. I was thinking the other day, like, with Lucic, like, likely not coming back by all accounts, like, I wonder if they do want that size on that fourth line. Like, Klapka's a very big man, and I don't think you need a ton of offensive skill in that role, right? Like, your role is to forecheck and be a physical presence. Like, I wonder if Klapka can, if he continues to develop, get a little bit of an outside look at the fourth line for the Flames, but who knows? So
It's interesting, like when we ask Mitch Love about, or when he was asked by Wes Gilbertson, my colleague, about him, like it does sound like they still feel like he's got a lot of work to do in terms of his development. But there's no question. I mean, he's been productive.
He's been fined.
Yeah. So Either way,
I know there's Mitch McLean, who is he has the potential to be an absolute lunatic if you need him to. He's very fun to watch. He's like, what is this man going to do?
He has good fits too. I see on the Wranglers Instagram they do a good job highlighting the most important thing, which is what the players wear to the rink. So
that was crazy. I spin my chair a lot, like it's something that I noticed, and I just spun it right underneath the desk and really hurt my finger now. So I'm in a lot of pain right now. Just wanted to let everyone know. I didn't feel like I could hide it because I reacted in a real way. So
the camera doesn't lie.
Yeah.
So
the Wranglers, just so that everyone knows, I'm going to repeat it. They are trying to fight off eliminations tonight in Palm Springs. Puck drop at 7 p.m. They're down 2-1 to the Coachella Valley Firebirds.
Stay out that box.
Beyond that, that's really sort of most of the hockey stuff that I have.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair.
But we can talk Stampeders. I know you've been there for a couple practices now. How you been enjoying it? What have you seen? What's the vibe you're getting?
I mean, it's early on. This is really like my second season covering the team, so I'm learning how it all works. It's been a lot of fun. I think the Philpott injury added a little bit of intrigue to Cole Tucker and them getting him signed. I kind of, whenever I look at the NFL element, I assume that like that guy's a long shot to come up here while he's exploring those opportunities. So the fact that they signed Cole Tucker right away, maybe to you, Danny, that wouldn't have been a big shock. But
no, I mean, the reality is I wasn't paying that close attention to the draft because it was my birthday.
Oh yeah, I saw you after the draft.
So yeah, I mean, I had to do a fair bit on all of the draft picks. Like, I think the fact that the Stamps took him in the first round certainly suggested that they believed he would be coming up pretty quickly.
Right. Yeah.
A guy like Ryson John is 6'7".
He's a
so
large
he's going to
man.
get a bunch of looks. That doesn't mean that Cole Tucker won't get an NFL look in a year or two. But it's pretty decent money for if the alternative is to wait around hoping for a practice roster job in the States that may or may not open up. It's like, why not go put some film on tape?
Is it as simple, Danny, as like Philpott gets injured, we don't know how long he's out, and like that opportunity now is completely up for grabs? It's like Tucker's to lose, or
I don't know if it's Tucker's to lose. I think the Stamps are pretty interesting. So they lost Richardson Danny.
Yeah.
So basically, for those who don't know, the Stamps play with 2 Canadian starting receivers, 3 Americans. Richardson Danny was one of their Canadians. He is now signed with Hamilton, which I didn't know. It was in my 50 things. And
the reunion continues.
Yeah, seriously. And then Jalen Philpott would have been the other starters. They lost 2 Canadian starters. I would expect Luther Hakanavanu sort of steps in for Sindani. So there's another Canadian spot that until Philpott is back, I think you'd look at Cole Tucker. I think Ryson John will be a end zone option.
Yeah, for
least
sure.
To start. He's massive and can outjump any CFL DB. So, so it's interesting.
It's not like Luther's a small guy either.
Yeah, he's
I keep
large
waiting. Like
too.
he had some flashes last season where it's like, okay, like I'm just waiting for this guy to have his breakout.
And that's completely it. And I wish that I had my my roster up because again I am. But anyways, their 3rd round draft pick this year, also out of the University of Guelph, is apparently they're really high on. But ultimately, you can't just replace Jalen Philpott's speed, especially for a Canadian. He's so quick. They like having him on the outside. But I mean, the Stamps are going to be fine. Honestly, like
they find players. It seems like they're scouting.
Well, now they've added Chris Steele, along with the release of 11 players last night. Former NFL DB signed with the Steelers after he was unselected in the 2022 draft. A couple preseason games, had some time with Miami, Seattle, Philly.
And that DB group, that's the thing. There's not just a job sitting there waiting. Like that DB group is you're going to have to go practice roster because you go across the board.
It's deep.
It's deep. You got Trey Roberson at boundary corner when he's healthy, arguably the best in the league. They're moving Jonathan Moxley to the boundary half. Brandon Dozier, super veteran, high-end guy at safety. Titus Wall at Sam's. I think Titus Wall, he would not have won most outstanding rookie last year had he stayed healthy, but he would have been number 2 for sure. And then Brad Muhammad at the field half, and then Nichelle Jamerson, who played like 5 or 6 games. Like it's a really, really good deep group. And I didn't even mention Kobe Williams. Like it's fun and it's not big names, but they've all played and they're experienced. And I'm just not worried about about.
So okay, so
And
on.
I'm just excited to see what Cameron Judge does in his second season as a Stampeder.
100%.
Oh yeah, that's true. Hey, he's had a really good first season. What would you be if you were a Stamps fan? What would be like the biggest concern or worry for you right now about this team?
I mean, like, look, they need a starting right tackle. Derek Dennis, who I spoke to today, like, is at the left tackle position. That's a vital position for protecting a quarterback.
And that was Julian Good-Jones. That was
Julian Good-Jones, who signed with the Philadelphia Eagles. So that position right there, like, the reason that this team really, when this team was at their best, they had the best offensive line in the league, and it was not close last year. So those two tackle positions, just Derek coming off a broken leg, being in his mid-30s, combined with that not knowing who the right tackle is, that worries me a little bit. And look, it comes down to one thing, man. What do you think Jake Maher is?
Yeah, that's
If
fair.
Jake Maher is a top 3 quarterback in the CFL, the Stampeders team is going to push the Winnipeg Blue Bombers the whole season. If he's not, and there were games last year where I understand people were a little nervous about him, I thought he was a young quarterback who had his ups and downs and didn't do great in the playoffs. But that happens to young quarterbacks, and you have to build from that and get better. If he's just the 6th or 7th best starting quarterback in the league, then the Stamps are going to struggle a little bit. And I made very, very clear. My number one, I do these 50 takeaways. It's exhausting.
I read them. It was part of my Sunday morning
Look how
routine.
good I am. I'm not putting my middle fingers in the air. But my number one was, look, this team hasn't won a playoff game since 2018. If you're a Stampeders fan, that is the thing that is on your mind, because since John Hufnagel arrived, this team, the minimum expectation was the West Final.
Yeah.
They haven't been there since 2018, since they won the Grey Cup. So I want to see it. I'm not going to treat this team like they're the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. The Winnipeg Blue Bombers are technically the second best, but they're the best team in the CFL. And how can I take, until the Stamps show it, they lost every game they played to Winnipeg last year.
Right, yeah.
Like, they didn't win a playoff game for the 3rd straight season plus COVID. So that's my thing, is I'm like, okay, go. Show me that this like slight rebuilding project that's happened since you won the Grey Cup in 2018 has been fruitful, that you're ready to actually push the elite teams, because Winnipeg's not going anywhere.
For sure. I'm intrigued, and I think this is one of your points in your column there. Like, when you lose that many key voices, whether it's Thurman or Bo Levi or other veterans that have moved on, like, who takes up that space? Like, Maher talked about it a little bit last season about how he tried to be more vocal, but he felt as a kid in his early 20s, kind of new to the game, that he only had so much ability to do that. Like, I wonder who the new voices, like, we all saw Thurm during post-game scrums, or like how livid he was, the tone that he set. Like, who are those people going to be for this team now?
Completely. And I mean, it's always a process with with football in particular, where you have just sort of more player movement year to year than you do sort of with hockey or certainly basketball. It is always a process of replacing those veteran voices. And so I don't know that I'm worried about it.
Okay.
But it is something to monitor.
Yeah.
You need those guys. And Jameer, I mean,
But already, like, I do think Jake carries a lot of respect with just the way he conducts himself. He's still pretty, like, despite ups and downs, he's confident in himself, seems pretty unflappable. And, like, I do think Bo did do a lot to kind of, like,
100%.
bring along and not try to ostracize him or anything. And that does make an impact. And it's a shame that we're not going to have that rematch at McMahon this year.
So stupid.
We're also robbed of a Nathan Rourke versus Jake Maher.
Yeah.
Next gen showdown.
Is BC not coming to Calgary this season?
Well, Nathan Rourke is.
Right. Yes.
We're talking more about him going to the NFL.
Yes.
But yeah, the fact that the Hamilton Tiger Cats are not playing in Calgary, I have no opinion on. I think it's the stupidest thing I've ever heard in my life. But yeah, no, I have all the confidence in the world that Jake can take that up. I also think it would have been really awkward last year, being the backup who takes up from the starter, who's a franchise icon.
Yeah, for sure.
But honestly, like you know, there are only so many people who currently are invested and care. Generally, they say the season doesn't start till Labor Day. That is not true. It starts in early June. But I will say that, like, from what I have seen, this is a young team that, like, literally, like, there's a confidence and level of self-belief that I haven't always seen going into seasons. And I'm so excited to see Kadeem Carey and Dedrick Mills run the ball. There's a lot that I'm excited about. It's going to be great. I wish that I was traveling. I'm not, but beyond that, I don't know. It's just, we're kind of wrapping up here. We've got a couple minutes, but it's just like, it's the Flames sort of loom over everything. But
For sure, yeah.
I don't know. I'm really excited for the summer. I think we have a lot going on.
Well, even the new basketball team over here,
Yes.
they'll add a nice element to the city. And I haven't gone to an Okotoks baseball game
you
yet.
haven't been to a
those
Dogs
are
game?
fun.
No, I
Those are
haven't
fun.
yet.
Oh,
we'll
it's
have
great.
to do
You pick
that.
like a beautiful summer night where it's not
Yeah.
smoky as all hell.
Yeah, asthma isn't acting up. Yeah.
Yeah. God. BC, yeah, whatever. Let's not get into the forest fires.
No, I was driving from Prince George to Creston and stayed an extra day.
Yeah.
Ended up hanging out with my sister-in-law, niece, and nephew a little longer than I expected. It's like a 10-hour drive if you get a good route.
Yeah.
Try to go, blocked off by wildfire. Like the only
my
way
goodness,
out of
wow.
Prince George back to Alberta. That's like the fastest way to go. So can't go that way. Go south. I missed a flood cutoff by like a couple hours in Cache Creek. Like
Wow.
there were sinkholes opening up. Like part of the road was gone in some places.
Wow.
And now like it's just swallowed up. Like BC is crazy. Like,
That's ridiculous.
and even like when I was younger, like mudslides. There's a mudslide on the summit just outside of Creston. There's a mudslide up
It's
the
like
lake when we were
the-
younger, and people
wow.
had to be like evacuated by boat.
Wow. That's
Yeah.
insane. Holy.
Yeah, let's knock on wood because this is already, I mean, beautiful couple weeks. I know I know you and I spent some time on patios because we did it together. But, we're certainly paying for it now. So I think we're probably pretty good to sort of wrap here. I'm going to do.
I know you have places to be.
I do have places to be. I do. Let's not talk about my drive back from BC. A day early instead of a day late. Yeah. Anyways, I'm going to do another ad read and just thank Ski Cellar Snowboard and skicellarsnowboard.com. That's who brought Salim Valji as our guest. So thank you. And I don't know. I hope this was
They just
fun
had
for
their big
people.
parking lot sale.
Yeah. Pardon me?
They just had their big parking lot sale.
I should have gone. I desperately need a new pair of skis.
Well, hey, man, like keep going. This is like the time of year to go get new ski stuff.
Prep up for.
And there is still spring skiing going on. Slush Cup has not yet hit.
No, that's true. Sunshine Village. That's this weekend, right? Next weekend?
Next weekend, 27th.
Cool. Well, either way, guys, I don't know. This was super fun. Salim, you were amazing. Peter Maher,
this is-
amazing too. I had a lot of fun. Hopefully people enjoy it. I believe Rob is hosting Friday. I think you and I are back next Wednesday. I don't know, guys. Enjoy the weekend. It's a long weekend. It's a good time. I got
Get
places
out there
to
and
be.
do our best. Make good choices.
Okay. Thank you very much. Take care, guys.
Thank you.
When there's two sides to every coin, then there's a conversation you can join. But I'm an old dog and there's new tricks, and some of my opinions you just can't fix. 'Cause I'm an old man yelling at the sky. I'ma shake my fists at the clouds and cry. Get off my lawn, you snowflake, before I have a meltdown, breakdown, shakedown. 'Cause this is my hometown, so back down, sports clown. It's all just a game, and it's the last down, let down, Cowtown. I said it's all just a game. I give the touchdown, the rundown, the lowdown. 'Cause it's over the game, gonna crack down and shut down the sundown. I said it's all just a game.